In this interview, we're going to get into some debatable topics which are much more personal experience than advice, and we'd like to make it clear that we are not presenting anything that follows as conclusive or recommended. Our aim is to present a wide range of perspectives so that you, the listener, can hear from people who are partially responsible for driving our culture, gain understanding about those who have affected the direction of bass jumping, and judge for yourself what direction is right for you.
See you down there.
Yeah, my brother.
Have fun. See you in a few.
Let's fucking get it. All right, 3, 2, 1. See ya.
Hello, friends. You're listening to Exit Point.
A podcast about the advancement of bass jumping and the exploration of its culture.
Join us for valuable insights and gripping stories from some of the world's top adventure athletes.
Oh my goodness, the sickest thing I ever did in my life! Woo!
Moab Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for having me in your home.
It's a pleasure, brother.
Now, as a lead into the first question, I've got to have you fill us in. How big is Moab as a town?
I believe it's around 5,000 people.
And we've got a pretty small drop zone out here.
It's very small.
So would you say it's accurate that most people know you through social media or the internet?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Throughout the world, if I haven't met them in person or jumped with them, yeah.
And what's that like when, people come up to you and, they know you already and your face and some of the stuff that you've done and you don't even know their name?
I mean, it's cool, I mean, I put a lot of effort into putting stuff on the internet. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's definitely, it's a humbling experience, but it's rad, I guess, yeah, why not?
Let me ask you this. Does putting yourself in the public eye have an effect on the reward mechanism for you? Like, for instance, does being an internet personality drive some of your motivation to bass jump or to push it?
No, I mean, I think it's quite the opposite. At the end of the day, it's really just the stuff I was doing, and I started posting and I put the stuff out there, and I think it was kind of an inverse relationship.
As an inverse relationship?
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
I mean, it's just what I was doing, and it just so happened that, it came to a level now that some people have seen it and come to me and they're like, man, I appreciate your videos. It's inspiring. And then I go, I appreciate you giving me that comment. I'll keep posting the stuff I'm out there doing.
Okay. How about the observer effect? I know that you've got a statement on that and some thoughts on the observer effect and how that affects people's motivation or at least how they engage in bass jumping. Can you get into that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impossible to have someone observing you and not have it affect the outcome, right? If you're out there solo by yourself, even a GoPro could be part of an observer effect, right? How many times have we seen people on an exit and they're concerned about their GoPro and their leg straps are off, that's the intense one Duke's found, right? But someone just told me a story about the guy in Thailand that was so fixated on his GoPro that he routed his rattle incorrectly and went in, right? So I think the observer effect can even extend beyond just people being around you, but definitely people being around you will affect your decision making. I remember on your podcast, Steph Davis said a thing about the noise that gets created. People don't have to say anything, right? But you got 10 people and their eyes are on you, can create a different mental space for you. I think it's pretty intense in the bass environment. The observer effect's real.
So if somebody is planning on making some kind of media post or, some kind of project out of what they're doing, could that not too fit into the observer effect?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So it's really just how you're thinking about the jump, right? If you have on your mind primarily that this is going to be something that is for public consumption, then you in effect are bringing all of those people along with you to observe the jump. No?
Yeah.
Okay, so then back to the first question, how do you avoid that infiltrating your motivation or somehow affecting the way that you're jumping?
I mean, the sheer consequences. At the end of the day, it's really nice to capture footage, right? I remember the last time we kind of talked about Carl Banish a bit, right? And how the godfather of bass was all about, like, we don't do it unless we get it on video and the lighting's right.
Right.
So while that can be a motivation, I think it's really important because you're never going to live in a world where we don't have these things. So the key is that you're focusing on why you're doing it, right? Like, why do you need to jump off this cliff? Why do you need to push your personal line? Is it because the drone pilot's there that day? Is that why you have to jump this line? Because it's going to look good on film and the lighting's right? I mean, if those are your only reasons, then you definitely shouldn't do it. But if it just so happens that, the production team's there or whatever the observer is, in quotes, because we just discussed a bunch of examples, you gotta go within and truly ask yourself, like, do I want to step off this cliff today? Am I willing to accept the consequences if I mess this up?
And speaking of going within, we talked in a previous chat about ego and base jumping, and you had a really kind of pretty straight line explanation of what role ego plays in your jumping. Can you get into that a little bit?
Oh man, yeah, we went pretty deep that day. So yeah, I need some help to remember exactly what I said, but yeah, it's we all have an ego. Without it, like, you wouldn't be yourself, right? I mean, Matt Moning said there's no skydiver out there with an ego less than a 4, right?
Right. And I mean, that's a reasonable statement. Like, if you have zero ego, then you literally don't have any concept of yourself. And so, like, it would be impossible to be excellent at anything. You'd just be devoid of excellence across the board. You'd almost cease to exist personally.
Yeah, right. And I mean, if you don't think you can do something, or think you can achieve something, or think highly of yourself, then you're probably not going to continue to push your personal best all the time, right? And keep pushing your own line, right? No matter whether you're the very best or the very worst at something, the fight for all of us is exactly the same. We all just want to get a little bit better at whatever it is we're doing, right?
And so if we agree that ego is required somewhat so that we have a sense of what we can and can't do, because in base jumping, if you don't have that, then it's very easy to end up just dead. What role does ego play, or how do you temper your ego within, the cutting edge stuff that you're doing so that you stay on the alive side of the line?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, at the end of the day, having a honest and accurate self-assessment of your abilities, which is constantly changing, right? Yeah, I mean, everyone has ups and downs, right? There's gonna be days where your ego is hitting harder than it should, and on those days, you got to recognize that and hopefully back off a little bit, or not get bit too hard. And
Or let me put it to you another way. You've said in the past that humility is kind of a moral muscle. How do you train that muscle?
I mean, like anything else, man, just active practice, right?
So what does practicing being humble look like? Because, like, if somebody were to watch your videos, they might say that this is anything but humble. Like, I mean, you are doing some pretty epic stuff, flying some lines that, require aggressive, precise, some might even say arrogant, moves in order to accomplish, because they are so, like, on the edge.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's abilities are their own, right? So I mean, there's levels to every game. At the end of the day, I think it was like my progression was seen as radical and fast, but I did everything people told me to do, like, and then way more. Like, when I went to Europe and I showed up there and I started wingsuit base jumping, I had like 1,000 wingsuit skydives and almost 500 slider off base jumps, and even like 1,500 or not even sure how many, maybe 2,000 skydives or something like that. And everyone out there is telling me how like, oh, wingsuiting kills, wingsuiting kills, wingsuiting kills. And in my mind, I'm like, well, the only thing I really know how to do is wingsuit. Like I really can hardly fly a 2-piece, and I've never flown a 1-piece. So I'm going to fly this wingsuit, and that's what makes sense to me.
So now that we're into progression, maybe we can back up a couple of steps. When did you start jumping?
I did a tandem in 2015, May 7th, and then I started skydiving April 19th, 2016 was my FJC.
And was your goal right off the bat to get to wingsuit base jumping, or?
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Yeah, I was like calling drop zones, asking how I fly the wingsuits down the mountains. I was, yeah, for sure.
So tell me what your experience was with, coming right out of the gate with that. Did people look at you sideways?
Oh yeah, you gotta pump the brakes, buddy. Whoa, what are you talking about? You gotta learn how to skydive first. I was like, okay, cool, bet, I'll be there. I'm gonna learn how to skydive. What's next?
Did you find anybody that heard your initial goal and went, great, that's a great goal, here's how you get started? Or were most people trying to slow you down and gatekeep?
Yeah, pretty much just gatekeeping. Yeah, it was not met with open arms.
So let me ask you this. Is gatekeeping totally inappropriate, or are there cases where it makes sense?
I mean, that's a really rad question, because I've been thinking on that pretty deeply lately. I think there's no magic in the words "you're wrong," and there's no magic in the words "no." Like you can't do that, right? It's definitely not a way to win a room over. So I think gatekeeping's inherently going to always be important, because we don't want people dying, and we don't want people going off half-cocked and doing crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, like you can gatekeep while continuing to make recommendations, and coming with, understanding that this is this person's goal. Okay, cool. Like when people come to me and say they want to be a wingsuit base jumper, the first thing I say is, that's rad. Awesome. How many jumps do you have? This, that, and the other, whatever it is. Okay, well, so long as they're seeking my advice, right? Your next step would be this, X, Y, Z. And let me know if I can help you with that.
See, to me, that still seems like gatekeeping. It just doesn't seem like, the person shutting you down. Like if I think it's common to look at gatekeeping in a matter of extremes. Like either there's somebody at the gate telling you no and never, or there's nobody at the gate and no gate at all, and then like a flood of people. And for me, like in base jumping or anything that like would cost you your life, both of those seem terrible.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like one's positive and one's negative. Like to be making recommendations of the steps you can take is positive feedback, whereas to say, no, you can't do that, or whatever this, that, or the other is. I mean, at the end of the day, effectively, people told me like, well, you need to learn how to skydive. And I was like, cool. Like that was a positive thing, right?
Right.
And that was gatekeeping in a way. Like you can't just go do that. You have to do this. I was like, bet, I'm going to go do that, and continue to just tell people what my dream was, and inherently got a lot of negative feedback. And those people I heard and listened to and obviously took that in. And then the people that explained to me, positive feedback of what I should be doing next, I did exactly what they said.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, that gatekeeping in and of itself is necessary for a sport like wingsuit base, because if somebody just, handed you a wingsuit and a base rig right out of the gate, and when you ask them like, what do I do? And they go, here, have this, go jump off that wouldn't have ended well for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's only necessary if you want to do it again.
And so then it comes down to the manner in which people gatekeep being either effective and helpful, or kind of just a total fucking waste.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of, like, do you want people to listen to you? Do you want to have an impact on people, or do you want people just to go, well, that guy was kind of an asshole. I'm going to go ahead and talk to someone else about this because he's clearly not going to help me reach my dream.
So what's your approach these days? Because I know a lot of people come up to you saying, hey, my goal is to do what you're doing, and, hey, I've got no experience. What can you tell me?
I mean, it's my phone number's on my website. If you hit me up on Instagram, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. I'm happy to have a conversation with absolutely anyone out there that either has no jumps or, whatever stage of progression they're in. And I just try to have conversations with people and see where they're at and see what I can do for them and, give them some advice. Like, that costs nothing,
Okay. Well, why don't we get into your personal progression? You started base jumping about 6 months after learning to skydive, which is quicker than most people. What was your progression into base like? How did you learn?
So yeah, I did, got my skydive license here at Skydive Moab in about 3 weeks at a Cessna only drop zone doing IAD. And then, people told me that Lodi was the place to be. Well, some people said that because there's affordable jumps. A lot of people said Lodi is where you go die. And I really just kind of heard there's really affordable jumps there. So
That's what I heard about Lodi. I came up in Paris, and Lodi had a terrible reputation. In fact, I didn't even get over there until I had like 1,000 jumps because I was so warned off against it.
Yeah.
What did you think of learning how to do something at Lodi? Did it meet its reputation, or was it overblown?
Well, I borrowed this rig from Bodie. It had a Sabre 150 in it, a Tempo 150 in it, and effectively just showed up there having just really jumped a 210 here. And I look at Dawes and I'm like, I'm here to jump. I got 27 jumps. He's like, what do you got? I was like, a 150. He said, you're not loaded that bad. Cool. Get after it. And it was literally, dude, it was bad. It was like blowing 25 knots. And I get out there and send it all good and whatnot, land out in the field. I'm like, man, I got it. This is awesome. This is great. Next day, not a breath of wind on the pond. And if you've been there, so it's just this massive LZ, right? And there's spots that are shiny and there's a bunch of water. Dude, I come in like half flare and just go rolling through this puddle, and I'm totally all right. But yeah, definitely a radical downsize with no wind, and I had to go sit there for like 2-3 hours and like watch people land and like think about jumping that canopy again. It's kind of ridiculous.
So Lodi is kind of adult rules only.
Yeah. But ultimately, I mean, I figured it out. I don't recommend this, by the way, to do the things people tell you with downsizing, because people told me that was stupid and I did it anyways. Was not bright and it worked out. But nonetheless, I did 168 jumps there in 6 weeks. And yeah, I just went to the bridge in November and started base jumping.
And who took you to the bridge, or did you go with anybody to the bridge, or did you just go figure it out?
Yeah, my buddy Adam Crum took me up there.
Crummy parachutes.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. A lot of people have learned from this person, lovely human being still in Moab.
Yeah, no, he's radical. He literally taught me to rig, taught me to skydive, and taught me to base jump.
Nice. So, okay, you touched a little bit on this question, but I'm just going to frame it up anyway. If you could redo any of your progression, either in skydiving or base jumping, would you do anything differently?
Probably would have actually jumped to 170 for a bit there.
Okay,
but no, I mean, other than that, honestly, I mean, dude, I just got so in it and so enveloped in it. Like that first year in 16, it was Moab for 3 weeks, Lodi for 6 weeks or 2 months. Then it was like a couple month break, and I was like 30 jumps at the boogie, and then it was just on. Like November, did 20 jumps at the bridge, came to Moab, like did a couple jumps at Turkey Boogie, was gone for literally like 3 months. Then I moved here February 17, and it was just every single day, all day, parachutes, like pretty much to now, other than like a few months break from time to time.
Can you speak to the advantages of being fully immersed in parachutes as you're learning?
Yeah, I mean, when you're living, breathing, and eating it, it's the easiest way to learn, right? I'm sitting there and I'm packing parachutes, and I'm living with the tandem instructors, and I'm learning how to rig, I'm learning how to sew. Before you know it, I got my rigger's ticket. Next thing you know, I'm an IAD instructor. Next thing you know, I'm AFF within 8 months of starting to pack, I'm shooting video. Yeah, I mean, it's just, if it's nonstop and you're not doing it on the weekends, like you're gonna progress faster. Like, what do we tell every student, right? Like, if you can get 3 weeks of time to wrap out your AFF and your license, or a month or 2 weeks or whatever, and you have the cash, like, do it like that, as opposed to coming in every weekend, right? Because it's going to take you 6 months to get your license as opposed to 4 weeks. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about just diving in the pool and staying in it for a long time.
Yeah, is there anything to be said beyond speed for being fully immersed and to surround yourself with all these different aspects of the sport while you're learning a particular discipline? Like you just mentioned 5 or 6 different disciplines that, most people wouldn't even get into because they have nothing to do with the end goal, but you did because you've, just decided to fully jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not even the speed, right? I think that it's like the whole 6 month thing to the month thing. It's only expanding to 6 months because you're having to redo everything, right?
Right.
Like that's why it's chalking it, or making it happen so much faster. It's because when you come back, you don't have to repeat the cat D1, the cat D1, the cat D1, or like, right? And
so it's not so much about the speed is a byproduct, but really what you're speaking to is the retention. Like when you're in it every day, you're going to retain more information and thus be able to build on it, versus having to like come back, redo, forget a bunch of stuff, make critical errors, mess up, get injured, learn it all again. And that's kind of a rough process.
Yeah, like exactly. I remember the day I started packing parachutes professionally was February 14th, 2017. And dude, I could hardly remember how to do it, and I had this sensation like, I want to be a professional parachute packer. And I've got a couple hundred jumps, like, whatever, the 30, 40 base pack jobs. And I took 3 months off to go work in the winter in Vail again. And I was like, could hardly remember how to pack. And that frustrated me. I was like, I don't want to ever feel like that ever again. I was like, I'm going to stay in this until it's just so, whatever subtle nuance we're talking about packing or instructing or this, that, and the other, wingsuiting is so ingrained in my brain and my muscle memory that I can actually take, a month off because I need a break, and, I don't want to burn out, or, just want to do something else for a bit. Right. And, yeah.
Yeah. How do you keep from burning out if you're going to fully immerse yourself? Is there a strategy to that? Is there some advice you have for people that are going to go down this road, having heard that, immersion is the better way to go?
Yeah, I mean, just seeing people burn out and not want to do it anymore, was definitely big. But then even, a lot of people having talks with me about like, yeah, don't burn out, yada, yada. Because you never think it'll happen. But then even recently, like January, I didn't touch a parachute. I just took a break. Like I played some golf. It's a new thing Cody was getting into, and we're like bonding over that. All of a sudden we're sending each other memes about golf and this, that. It's all been wingsuit, right? So yeah, you just gotta listen to your heart, and yeah, where your heart goes, your feet will follow, right? So if it doesn't feel right and you want to take a break, take a little break. It's not a big deal. Like there's no rule out there that says you need to be base jumping right now, right? There's no rule there that says you need to be skydiving right now. Professionally, if it's your work, then inherently there's a reason to get out there and be doing it. But there's other jobs out there. Like if you don't want to do this rad thing, like go find a different job, right? Yeah, follow your heart, and burnout shouldn't really be necessary.
Right. Okay. So it's like about immersion without force.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So getting into some personal stuff, why did you get into base jumping in the first place?
Yeah, like the easy answer is I think parachutes called to me because effectively what I say is like parachutes saved my life.
Really?
Yeah.
How did parachutes save your life?
I don't know how deep to dig into this right now. How much time we got? Yeah. Right?
Oh, dude, we got plenty. We're rolling.
Yeah, effectively around 21, I was definitely getting pretty confused. Like I was doing good. I had probably like a 3.0 GPA in college, and I was just kind of following the cookie cutter lifestyle of you go to school and should get a finance degree and you major in business and
White picket fence.
yeah, why
2.5 kids.
But
the whole
why,
nine.
why? Well, that's because what you do is this, so you can make a bunch of money and you can be successful and yeah, you can pay for all this, this life that everyone has that obviously you want because look, like you got to be like this.
Yeah, dude.
And,
Opt into the matrix.
Yeah. I think it just kind of, I took some time off to, cause I joined the climbing club and, I was kind of finding that as a passion. I learned how to camp at 19, right? I was never really like an outdoorsy guy, but I could just feel like I was getting really drawn to the outdoors and climbing. So I just bailed for like 6 months and went and did that. And I just remember I remember knowing that I was having to go back to school and I was just like dreading it. Like I was so depressed. Like it was killing me. I just wanted to be out there rock climbing and kind of doing my thing for a bit. And yeah, it was just breaking my brain that I needed to go back to school. And I remember just like driving through Grand Junction and I was like, I should be out here. I could feel it. I was like, I need to be out west. Like I need to be doing different stuff. Like this isn't the life for me, but I went back anyways. And I like tried to keep giving it a go. And it went so south. I just started getting into partying and doing drugs and honestly just lost it, Yeah.
Self-destructive path.
Yeah, you got it, dude. I just snapped into, and I couldn't figure out why, at the time. But looking back now, I realize it's just because I wasn't meant to be there, and I didn't have the wherewithal to follow my heart at the time and just, run away and actually go for it and just work in a ski town and figure it out, right? Because absolutely no one, especially your mom or your family, is going to tell you to go out there and risk it all, Like
Right.
It makes sense. Like, why are they going to tell you to drop out of college and just go out west and see what happens by becoming a ski bum? It doesn't really make sense, right?
Right. And yet, like, looking back on my own life and having similar thoughts, like if I were to give myself advice back then, I'd be like, sure, go try it. Like you can always take a semester off. You can always come back to this. Like there's no rush to finish school right now. Like, why would you not go do this if you feel like returning is just going to be absolutely soul crushing? So, okay, you decide to get on the self-destructive train. How did that look? What happened?
Oh, not pretty, man. Yeah, I mean, ended up in the mental ward,
Oh,
Oh yeah. Got a pretty rough DUI. Went to rehab, like did the whole shebang, which now I'm pretty grateful for because yeah, definitely learned a lot in those rooms.
are we talking like heavy user, or would you ever have, considered yourself an addict?
I mean, I don't really dig the word addict and relapse. I ran the 12 steps and did that stuff. I didn't exactly totally feed into that because at the end of the day, it's just a little intense for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did 3 years like completely sober and that was rad. But like to this day, I like to party. I like to drink beers. So clearly that whole hierarchy isn't exactly for me. I'm not against it.
Well, I mean, there are distinct differences. That's why I ask. Like, there are people who are addicts and self-admittedly, and there are people that are heavy users and self-admittedly.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I was just self-medicating. I was so lost, I don't, and I don't really think I did. To answer your question, yes, of course, I sat up there as like, "Hi, Joe, I'm an addict." I did the whole shebang. But if we're really thinking on a deeper level, like thinking 10 years later,
right?
Like, do I really believe that was true? Honestly, not really, because at the end of the day, even when I went to rehab, I literally was like, all right, it's time to clean my life up. And I just quit everything. Like I didn't need to be,
It wasn't a compulsion.
what the fuck do they call that when they put you in a detox and whatnot, right? Like, I never actually like detoxed and like had any of these like proper,
okay.
when like observing you, right?
Yep.
And they're stressed out. You're going to withdrawals, right? Withdrawal and die, right? Because like you drink too much alcohol and you literally stop cold turkey, it's going to fucking kill you.
Right.
Like
cirrhosis
Xanax
is a hell of a thing.
Yeah, and certain drugs are like that, right? Xanax and heroin are a couple of ones that can actually kill you. Everything else is like not really a big deal, right? You just stop doing it. But in my
okay, I get what you're saying. That's a slight overgeneralization, but like I hear you.
you feel me?
I feel you. Yeah.
Yeah. You can just quit cold turkey. Right?
Yeah, they're like, let's just put a heavy caveat on that. Like, where there are some other things that are in the same category that like are also like habit forming and definitely will cause withdrawals.
Should state, I am not a medical doctor, nor a psychologist, nor a drug professional. So take it with a grain of salt.
Okay, so let me ask you this then.
We knew we were gonna get somewhere today, huh?
Yeah, definitely. What did you get out of drugs and alcohol? Like I'm hearing the narrative as, you find this thing about yourself and ignore it. Then you get into like the soul crushing reality of, being one of the quote unquote normal folk, just trying to like work to live. And that wasn't serving. And so all of a sudden, you get into the party scene and these drugs and alcohol. But like, I honestly want to know during that period, were you getting anything out of those drugs and alcohol?
I mean, the people you surround yourself with quickly become your consciousness and your reality.
Well, that's interesting.
Oh yeah. You fall into a bad crowd, man. No, I think it's death by 1,000 cuts, and you got a really good one. It's 359, right?
Yeah.
It's just this incremental thing, right? And it's because I was so afraid to make this, 180-degree switch, right? Or even just 90-degree turn. It just like, 1 degree at a time over like whatever it was, a year, just slowly but surely started going. Maybe it was 5 degrees, right?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden you're just in this place and you're like in this black hole and you're literally looking at yourself like, how did I get here? Like, what is going on? Like, why do I hate myself? Like, what the fuck?
Okay, so the answer to the question is no. Like you didn't really get anything out of these things. They were just like, kind of a, I don't know, unintentional road to the abyss.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, now I've gotten a lot out of it because I can see, what habits are not good, and that's something that's super dangerous, right? But at the time, I thought I was getting something out of it.
Right. That's
via self-medicating.
How about
right?
that? Like,
but
I'm curious on that like particular point, because like I know in retrospect, you can easily say that it wasn't really serving your end goal, but during which, and we've got a lot of friends that are, in similar spots. It seems like, they're getting a lot out of it. So like
you're on pause, man. Like
okay.
if you're really using drugs a lot, you're just on pause. Like you start smoking weed at 15, you stop at 25, you're going to fucking land at 15, like if you're smoking weed every single day. And that's, I think, I can't remember who said that to me. And I was like, that's pretty intense. But at the end of the day, I was like, I could kind of actually get behind that. Like if you're just drinking every single day, like you're pretty much going to just put your whole life on pause, right?
Is that
and
something
just numb
that
yourself out, right?
Is that something that you're proposing as like something that like kept you going during that period, like, having time out?
Yeah, I just think I was like hurting so bad. And like I said, I didn't all this stuff is retrospective, right?
Right.
Or, hindsight's 20/20. But at the time, you're just like hurting, bored, and you think it's all harmless, and you're just kind of rolling around with these cats or this, that, and the other. And yeah. It just gets bad.
Well, moving out from the bad, when did you hit rock bottom or realize that? And like, what was the motivation to get out of the abyss?
I honestly, I looked at my mom one day, and this is a really sad story, but because to this day she kind of reminds me of it like every once in a while. But I just looked her in the face. I was like, I'm gonna die here. Like, I am going to die here. That's a fact. I'm watching people fall off and die around me and stuff from drugs or what have you, just stupid decisions. And I was like, I gotta go. So actually what happened was I was pretty much just like out of cash, like had gone completely broke. And her boyfriend, her husband now, bought me $100 gas card. And I took the $100 gas card and I drove to Colorado and got a job working in a ski town.
Boom.
Yeah.
So coming full circle, do you have any words of encouragement or advice for anyone that's kind of stuck in that space?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, man, or lady, or whatever these days. Yeah, people want to help you. Believe it. If you feel like everyone's abandoning you, it's probably you, and you're probably hurting them more than you could ever imagine. So look within and try and get it together, because you can definitely do it. But the world's not against you. The world's with you. You might just be way against yourself right now.
Coming out of the abyss, what about parachuting called you?
Oh man, I don't know. Dude, I remember seeing like video, like I remember seeing Uli's hole, dude. Like, swear, like it must have been when it happened. And this dude, apparently Uli, who knew, goes ripping through this hole. And I'm like, that's incredible. Like, if he can do that, I can fucking do that. Like, why can't I do that if he can do that? Like, you know?
Yep. Okay. So just an incredible visceral, like, kind of reaction to seeing somebody fly through.
It was literally that video, man. Like, I'm telling you, I saw that video on YouTube. I was like, that's absurd. I guess one other thing that was the cherry on top, but I actually remember my sister went to West Point and I saw these guys jump out of a helicopter and do a demo. And that was probably well before seeing that video, right? Or actually it could have been around the same time, but I just remember seeing these guys pop out of this helicopter, just clear as day, like these bodies falling and then parachutes coming out and them landing in the field. I was like, that is so cool. I wish I could do that someday.
Okay, now I have to kind of touch on this because I imagine many people will be asking this who are not jumpers, but both of the things that you've just mentioned, like heavy drug and partying and, extreme wingsuit base jumping, both seem on the surface to be self-destructive. What defines self-destructive behavior for you? Like, is there a difference between, killing yourself slowly with, drugs and alcohol, or, potentially doing that through base jumping? Because to put a point on this, Uli's not around anymore because of his wingsuiting.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think you can make a comparison of the two. While both are high risk, we could agree to that. There's just no comparison to Jimi Hendrix and Uli, like,
Well, I mean, both rock stars of their, proposed disciplines.
Yeah, and one you're like, major bummer, like went too soon. The other one you're like, major bummer, went too soon, but was rocking out and doing what he loved. And that's honestly a healthy thing, like a healthy activity, even though it's very dangerous.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix did not die ripping a guitar solo.
No, he did not. He was choking on his vomit in a bathroom.
Right. So, okay. All right. So one is like literally only in service of self-destruction. The other one is in service of a dream, but could end up destroying you.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course. Yeah, it's very high risk.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So how has your mentality about the value of life changed since getting into base jumping?
I mean, that's a good one, you know? I mean, I was standing on the railing at the bridge yesterday and I was just thinking, man, this is so cool. Like, what an incredible spot to be in, right? I mean, you I'm sure can speak to it as well, like just the flow state you go into the moment you're approaching the edge and like you make the decision to go, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. Like base jumping just makes me want to live more and more and more and more and gives me truly like that reason to live, right? Which I didn't have when, you know, I got lost when I was a very young man, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. What are you up to now? What are some of the epic things you've been doing? And, you know, feel free to like roll back this the timeline to wherever you feel is appropriate here.
I mean, the question is, what am I up to right now?
Or what have you been up to, you know, like in your more recent jumping? Let's fast forward from where we left off of you learning how to skydive and base jump to the point where you're, you know, ripping lines and potentially even chasing the inspiration that led you to base jumping in the first place.
I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, last year was like a pretty big year for me. It was pretty much a wingsuit base year, you know, along with, I mean, the necessary working to make that happen. Right. But I mean, the thing I was most excited about was just running around and ticking off a bunch of things on the list. You know, we hit, Hope and, you know, the Treehouse exit, and we were up in Squamish and just hit all the bangers up there. And then ran over to Alberta, saw Cody, like hit some of his backyard stuff, and then made it to Europe and what got Dreamlines and Uli's Hole. And it really was made it back to Moab and did that underneath the boulder line. I saw Will Mitchell do fucking in 19, as well as Superdome. Like it was just, it was a really awesome year.
All right, let's talk about a couple of those. First, since we've already mentioned it, let's talk about Uli's Hole. So you came up wanting to fly through that, which, you know, if anyone is unfamiliar with this thing, maybe can you give a description on what this actually is?
Yeah, I mean, it's about 2.5 meters wide at its width. I think maybe it's 3.5. I thought it was 2.5.
I think it's 2.5 because it only looks like there's like, you know, 6 inches to a foot on either side of his wingtip as he's flying through it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just right. Like it's just the right size for, you know, not too tall of a man or lady. I'm only 5'8", 5'9", so you know it's perfect for me.
Right, like Dean Potter might have scraped it if he wanted to try and fly through.
Shit, what 2 meters is that? 2 meters is well over 6 foot, right? Because a meter is
it's
3
about
point something.
3.1.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, what am I, like 1 point? I should figure out how tall I am in meters to figure out like the actual margin I had, but I don't know. It's just, it looked great. It's a lot taller than it is wide, but it's actually more important that it's wider considering you go through it like, you know, with your arm span, your wingspan.
Okay, so really small hole. What is it like to spot that thing? You know, what's the entrance to it look like?
The start's actually a little shorter than I thought. I don't have the exact numbers, but I recall there actually being like some pretty good ledges around the 100, 120 meters. So you definitely need a pretty good start. And yeah, I can't remember the altitude, but you know, it's somewhat up there in the mountains. It's nothing crazy. And then from there, yeah, you just get started well, obviously. And then you turn and pretty much just lines up pretty perfectly to, you know, what would be a decent glide ratio. Like, honestly, I don't remember stressing at all. I just remember having a solid start, and then you just turn and boom, you see it.
You see it. I mean, you see a 6 meter hole from how far away?
You can't exactly see it from the exit. You can, at least if I'm recalling exactly correctly, I believe you can like walk over to the side. You can spot it like, oh, there it is. And then you come around, so you like pop off. And then effectively, like you come around the corner, like there it is. And you can see it for like 6 seconds, maybe 8 seconds, and you can line it up, you know, pretty comfortably, I'd say.
6 to 8 seconds. I mean, that's a pretty fair distance.
Yeah.
That's not nothing. I mean, like, to put this in comparison, you know, when I flew through the crack in Switzerland the first time, I was looking at it going, that is tiny, like from how far away we were, you know? And then when we got to it, turns out it's like a football field. It's huge. Yeah. You know, like it's its own base jump in itself. I cannot imagine looking at a 6 meter hole 6 to 8 seconds of flight away and being like, oh, no problem. That feels like it's like, you know, throwing a dart at a board, you know, across 100 meters, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, I've done a decent amount of targets, and, you know, I've never missed a target. And these gaps are like the exact inverse of that. You're just trying to go through this empty space and like not hit the outside. Whereas a target's like you're trying to convince your brain to truly run into something while you're flying a wingsuit. Like, it's the craziest wormhole ever. Like, it's just this thing getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you actually collide with it. Like, it's the only thing you're supposed to hit in a wingsuit is, you know, this foam target. So like, yeah, it's like the white room of wingsuiting, right? All of a sudden it's like, poof, and it's just gone. So, yeah, I felt like that was decent training for it. And the targets always look tiny and are like hard to find. So when you see these holes and you come around, you can actually see it from 6 seconds away, and it just keeps like, the hole's like small, and then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You're just like, I believe, like, you know, like, send it.
Okay, so that was my next question, is how you train for these. And I'm picking up many, many target hits. Is there anything else that you did specifically to get your body or mind prepared to fly through this thing? Because, like, again, for anyone listening who has not seen or heard of this thing, one twitch going into this hole and you're 100% dead. I mean, you sneeze and you're dead. You fart and you're dead. You take a long breath and you're dead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just can't miss. It's just got to be perfect. Like you said, you need perfect stillness. You know, the targets are a great one because you always flinch, and, you know, people flinch underneath it, right? So I always kind of say, like, just aim a little bit high, but like what you quickly realize is just don't react. And it's the exact same thing going through these things. Like, once you've lined it up and you had faith, like, you don't have a choice. Like, there's a certain like no changing moment, you know, like a couple 100 yards out or whatever. Like, you need to make the decision. And I think that visualization, you know, where you've thought about it for me, you know, what was it? Who knows, 8 years, 10 years or whatever. You're kind of working it up in your mind. One, that you want to do something like this and you'd like to exist in that space, which I think is key. And then you just realize what you need to do, which is, you know, perform perfectly. And like you said, you know, don't move and, you know, have the resolve.
So mentally projecting yourself into a place that is effective for the flight line.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you end up staying still? Is there a mantra to this? Do you practice meditation?
I mean, I literally just, as I'm like going through, I'm like, sit still, like, don't move, like, just like, because there's a moment where, like, I don't know, time almost like froze, and I'm like going perfectly through, but I like almost look over in my eyes. I'm like, I'm in this thing right now, and it's like boom, but it's like happening in a millisecond.
Yeah.
Which I, by the way, don't recommend doing that. But even like when I did that tree gap in Brazil, I specifically remember like going through it and like looking down and like looking at the leaves and like seeing how close to them I was. But in my mind, I was like, only your fucking eyeballs can move, or else you're gonna blow this. So, yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this. Is it like a total focus the whole way through? Like you try and put your body on rails from the beginning? Or is it more like a Gary Cunningham like type of thing? Or sorry, not Gary Cunningham. Who was it that flew into the boxes?
I have no idea.
Oh,
yeah.
God, man, that's going to kill me. I love you out there. But, you know, on that stunt, like it was like rattly the whole time. And then all of a sudden he gets close to the boxes and he just like leans in, perfect body position, flies it out, boom. So like my question is, you know, as you're like entering this line and getting into like ranging the target, do you try and keep yourself on rails, or do you keep it loose for like the first 3/4 of the jump and then get into a focus mode to like, you know, get through the hole?
No, I like to be super sharp all the time. Like I watch a lot of videos of people flying, and I like kind of see like, you know, like swagging around, or like, I don't know, like there's like weird things with the arm wings and like, you know, bumpiness. And I've always kind of tried to like look at my videos and fly as smooth as is humanly possible and be making, you know, like really minute adjustments. And if I'm going to do something, you know, like throw a sword or whatever, like I'll have big banks or something, but even the banks, like I just want to be like, yeah, like you said, like on rails, just laser sharp and everything's super smooth. So that way when I am doing these things, it's just like how I fly. Gotcha. And it's like never if you see bumps, it's likely like I'm hitting turbulence or something like that. It shouldn't be that I'm flying poorly, because I kind of look at that as flying poorly. I think that you should always be on rails, especially if you want to fly the way I most often choose to fly, which is pretty low. Like you just need to be very sharp.
Oh, it was Gary Connery, first person to land a wingsuit, or some would say crash a wingsuit. He like landed into like a football field worth of cardboard boxes.
Yeah. No, I remember that video, but I never looked up his name. Sorry, Gary.
No worries. So what happens if you hit turbulence as you're about to go through the hole? Like
that'd probably be pretty bad.
So is that just a risk that you're willing to accept for the goal?
I mean, conditions are going to play into that. Like, with wingsuiting, you can create more margin. If I'm here at home in Moab and the flight's a little bumpy, or like I went up on a day where the conditions, weren't the best, and we create the bumps, or like conditions weren't as good as I expected, or right. You fly higher, right? And you don't fly close to the ground, because you could be getting lobbed around, and that's going to be, that could be anywhere from like just, a tiny little bit to you get dropped like 10, 15 feet, right? Like you can get thrown around. So I would say, for the hole, you just wouldn't want to attempt that on a day where the forecast would have something like that.
Gotcha.
As well as, sure, I guess there is just like the off chance that it could randomly happen, but I mean, you should be able to forecast that, as well as if you come off and, you felt bumps, like, then hope to God you feel them before it's in the wrong spot, right?
Right.
You can actually bail.
You can bail. Yeah. Good point. All right. Well, let's move on to Dreamlines, which is actually the movie that got me into wingsuiting. I was like, I'm never going to wingsuit. And then I saw Yake Summer like post this video of Dreamlines, and it was just epic. So I've never flown it. What was it like to fly that line?
I mean, righteous, dude. Fucking rad start to like a really intense start for sure. Can't remember what it was. I think it's like 40-10 is one of the numbers. So yeah, it's 40 meters down, 10 meters out, which is definitely a substantial number to get over. And then, you come around this corner and you're kind of just like bobsledding through trees. The key is to not go too far right, because it gets flatter and flatter and flatter, and has definitely bit a lot of people.
Yeah. And I mean, it's got such cool visuals too. I mean, they've got like avalanche fences and fields of dreams and trees everywhere. Like there's a lot of cool terrain to fly by.
Yeah, no, it's sweet. No, it really is. I'd like to get, the approach is, you're literally just like hugging, you're on like a 60-degree grass slope, like climbing up and down for like an hour on this shark's fin almost, with crampons or micro spikes on. Like even the approach is, not a gimme at all. Like it's really intense to get to, which honestly in all made it even more fun, because I'm just kind of out there like soloing this grass hill, like thinking like, do I want this? Like, is the Dreamlines worth it? And yeah, it was all around just a really rad experience.
So was it worth it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it was super rad. I'm just really fortunate, honestly, that, I think I would have read it right either way, but I definitely was, I wanted to do it the way, Chris Burns did, the green flying dude, right? I was like, I want to fly underneath this tree, and then the next tree, and then I'm gonna bust out over that. And like, to do that, you need to be seriously carrying some power, and then you end up banking right, like effectively into the terrain that's just coming up at you, and you're losing speed to the point where like, it gets pretty difficult to make it over the trees at the bottom. And yeah, just definitely can't stress that one. If you're gonna go for it, watch out for the right hand side, because some of these videos out there make it look pretty fucking easy. And yeah, Chris is pretty fucking good. Or what was pretty fucking good. And
he was
good.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I saw the video. I was like, I can do that, blah, blah. And then you're running out of energy going at the trees. And it's a pretty sinking feeling, quite literally, pun intended.
So talk to me about the sinking feeling for a second. What does it feel like to fly through that line? And what does it feel like to be that close to the edge?
Not, I mean, like I said, I was prepared for it. You know, people told me that, and I felt like I was bringing enough energy through the line. But it definitely was one of those, like you said. I mean, it was getting really close to the line, possibly the closest I've come to, you know, running out of energy on the terrain. And yeah, I mean, that in and of itself, like speaking about it right now, it's like a terrible feeling. It's god awful to think about it and the possible consequences, of course. But in the moment, you know, it went my way, and I clearly flew it right, because I'm here talking to you. But yeah, I don't know.
All right, how about this?
It's weird. Yeah,
specifically?
it's intense to talk about stuff like that, is what I should say.
How is it like to fly underneath that tree on that line?
I didn't make it underneath the tree. I was trying to make it underneath the tree.
You did? It looked like from the video like you made it under the tree.
I don't think I'm pretty sure I didn't make it underneath the tree.
Okay. How close were you?
I was like right next to it. I was like on level pretty much with the branch, I think. I made it under, it was Brazil where I was like completely underneath that one tree.
Okay. So different videos I might be compiling in my head. There's like this one famous tree on this line that Chris Burns flew underneath, and everyone's like, "What? Did he just get shade underneath a tree on a wingsuit base jump? That's like gnarly."
Dude, it's not easy. Like I'd like to go back and make it underneath there, but like for the first go, I definitely didn't quite hit it right, and did not make it under.
So as far as the technical side goes, can you give us any notes on power management through a line like that? How do you prepare? How do you analyze that? Like, what's the skill set necessary to have proper energy management through like such a long and technical line?
I mean, you just gotta keep your speed up like all the time. And ultimately the issue with that one is if you just go too far right, like it's not possible, right? Like there comes a point where if you're this low here, right, far enough back, and all of a sudden the terrain gets flat enough, right? Like you're not going to make it over because there's like 40-foot trees at the finish, or 20, 30-foot trees, right? And you're actually connected with the terrain. So you actually got to make it over that. So that means you need, whatever it is, like a 20-foot flare, right? Yeah. Which, if you're scrubbing the whole way, and flattening out, you're not going to have that energy, right? So I think mainly the braddest thing we can do is learn from the people we've lost on it, and, take it easy on the first go and work your way over and work your way over and work your way over. So that way you have the potential energy you need when you choose to really get in there, and then just realize there's a line in the sand somewhere over there. And I don't know where that is. I've only flown it once, but I can tell you, I felt that it was very real.
Okay. So really what I'm taking from this is, instead of focusing on energy management, focus on terrain management first.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm just being cautious at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. So let's take it to slightly different terrain. You mentioned Moab, and you are Moab Joe. So talk to me about flying in Moab and what it's like to, fly in a totally different kind of context where, the whole flight is only a couple seconds.
I mean, I love it here, honestly. I feel like Moab's kind of like the perfect jumping off point and training ground. I drive 20 minutes and I hike for an hour or two, and I can get a 30-second wingsuit flight and a 30-second canopy ride. I mean, it's everything here is short, and you're pretty much into the terrain immediately, right? By the fact of it's short, but the terrain's like, most of it's at a really rad angle where you can actually get into it and play with it, so long you're actually in a spot that's tall enough. And then you build a bunch of power and disconnect. So at the end of the day, I kind of look at it as like pretty straightforward, especially with having flown here for a really long time, albeit technical. Whereas like, there in these big mountain scenes, right? Like, people can get lost because the lines are so long, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not going to get lost here, right? So it's actually an advantage in my book, right? When I go other places, I got to be really careful to like, really pay attention because I'm not familiar with the area, right?
So from a navigation standpoint, it's much easier. Are there other skill sets that are necessary to develop before you bring your wingsuiting to like the chip shot palace of Moab?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think you'd want to be really dialed in your start and really comfortable in your suit. Be comfortable with terrain coming up at you, because ultimately, like, you can't just pop off and pitch. Like, you do have to get flying, build some speed, and disconnect away. So like terrain, it's not like, you know, places where the exit's so big that you can just go for a cruiser. I mean, you can, like, depending upon like the type of person you are, right?
But it's almost necessary to be in the terrain at some stage.
Yeah, I mean, that's just such a personal thing, right? Like, because you look at it, how, you know, some cats will fly out here and you don't have to fly off the ground. But at the end of the day, like, you know, what's 20, 40 feet, right? If you're used to being 200 feet off the ground, right? It's just, there's a very different sensation. Like, I remember the first time I popped off Super G, I was just like, oh my God, like, you know, I'm totally in it, you know, you build power and potential energy and you flare up. And now I don't feel that anymore because I'm experienced here. But, you know, I think that's just like a very real thing for anyone who's not, if you're not super comfortable flying terrain, you probably shouldn't be flying here.
I mean, that's the point that Rich Webb brought up way back in the day when he was kind of pioneering some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Is that we need to think about safety a little bit different, right? Like, his kind of proposition was that closer to danger or impact is actually farther from harm because you are carrying more energy.
Absolutely.
And that gives you more options.
Absolutely.
And yeah. Okay. So
100%.
So you could pop off and just try and stay away from the terrain the whole time, but ultimately you're going to end up at the end of that jump with no airspeed, no options, and if you've made any poor decisions like in the terrain, you know, also
not a very clean deployment as you just stall because you went for max glide, you know, on a really good condition day. You know, you might have more room for error, but yeah, no, exactly. Like, definitely need to be comfortable, like, putting your face at it, I'd say.
So speaking of putting your face at it, you mentioned this boulder jump that you got from Will in 2019.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that one.
Oh, it's I mean, it's pretty sweet. I can't remember the numbers, but effectively, like, if you're on top of Dragon's Nest and you look, I mean, you walk like 40 feet to the left of it, maybe 100, I don't know. It's just right there on the exact same face of that corner where you exit on Dragon's Nest. Jumpers left of that. There's a pretty large boulder and, you know, just a little flat, like 100 meters down. And, you can pop off, and pretty much once you get flying, you just cruise right underneath this boulder and then can go cruise around the Fisher Towers.
Underneath this boulder? What are we talking? What does that mean?
No, like pretty much like you're like submerged.
Like, you get some shade?
I don't know. It's pretty close. Like, it's definitely pretty close. Like, it feels great.
Okay, so
if it was the right time of day, you could get some shade. You wouldn't want to get some shade. You want the sun like right on your face.
Okay.
But hypothetically, like, it's over the top of you.
So give us a picture of this. You've been talking about lines that are like thousands and thousands of feet, you know, multi-second. Like, maybe if you know, we don't need to get into the technical numbers of the boulder jump, but like, how big is this thing overall, and how close to the terrain do you get when you fly by this boulder?
I honestly, like, I had more margin than I thought. Like, I could have, you know, not gone under it, but I pushed underneath it for sure.
Yep.
And I was pretty surprised at that. But I mean, it was a really good day. You know, sunny, you know, got some thermic lift, even like a little headwind. It's definitely, everything was coming up at you. And, you know, everyone else went. And I was just like pondering it for a while. And I don't know, I just really wanted it that day, but I can't remember what it was. I think it's like 140, honestly, or like 137 is like one of the numbers.
Meters?
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, 100 down, like I'm probably making shit up, but it's right there in like the 35 to 40 is definitely a pretty good number. And for me, I'm usually like, I'm always 140. Like, I'm usually more in like the 145 or like the 150, i.e. like my body, when I'm 100 meters down, I'm 50 meters out. Or on a really good start day, I've hit like as high as, I can't even remember what my personal best is, like 75 on like a wicked start day. So it's definitely one of those starts that you truly, you know, that if the conditions aren't perfect, you're not going to do it. Like you need good conditions, right?
Also, you're a pretty light guy overall.
Yeah. But it's definitely one of those, like, as you're crunching the numbers, you're like, okay, you can't just go up there on any day and do it. Like it literally everything needs to come together. You need to be sharp. You need to be current. The conditions need to be perfect. And then you're going to have the margin I'm talking about where like, oh yeah, I felt good. Like I pushed it down into it. Right. But that could be very different if absolutely everything hadn't lined up. And like, even if you make, the slightest mistake, right?
Yeah. Okay. So still though, like as you're pushing down into it, how close to the train were you getting?
I mean, yeah, pretty close, a couple meters, I'd say probably
6 feet,
yeah, probably
less than a Joe's height.
if I had to guess. Yeah. Somewhere in there.
Okay. So, backing up a step, you mentioned the conditions on all of these things. Can you also talk about the specific, tools that you're using? What kind of weapons, what kind of, wingsuits are you flying on each one of these lines, or is it the same thing that you're using for each one of them?
I stick with the Corvid 2.
In Moab.
Yeah, in Moab.
Okay.
Other than that, I've jumped the Freak here a little bit. I jumped some Phoenix Fly suits here back in the day, back in 19 primarily. I jumped the A2 here. The Corvid 1 extensively for like 2 seasons. But now that I have the Corvid 2, I don't really like, I have my quiver. Like I really like my Corvid 2. I get a lot of questions about the A5 and I honestly haven't flown it. I'd be interested in flying it. Don't get me wrong. I think it'd be cool. It'd be rad to like, compare the numbers, but even, I don't know, it's just really nice to be on the same suit for a couple seasons. Like before we know it, probably the Corvid 3 will be coming out or what have you. And it's just really convenient to have something I know works. And I don't have to like relearn this whole new suit or like, start from zero and get all the new numbers yet again. Like I'm excited to have this season on my Corvid 2 yet again. Like I'm fired up. It's got, I could look in my logbook exactly how many base jumps it has on it, but I'd be guessing it's maybe 100. I mean, I've only got like 330 or 50 wingsuit base jumps, right? So it can't have more than like 100, 150. So it's definitely still fresh enough that I'm not concerned with it. And yeah, I just really love that suit.
How about for like the Uli's Hole and Dreamlines? Same tool?
Yeah,
different
same
tool?
tool.
Same tool.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting you to say something like a little sharper for those other ones, like maybe a C race or some stuff like that.
Yeah, and maybe like an Aura. It might be rad to have a Europe suit for me. But even then, like, all of a sudden I'm taking that over there and I'm like, do I take the Aura or the Corvid? And I just haven't really taken the time to get data with the Aura because I don't have one. And yeah, the Corvid 2 has definitely been my suit to get pretty much everything I did done last year.
All right. What motivates you to do jumps like this? Like what motivates you to rip it?
That's a good question. I think about that a lot when I'm up there. I just have to, like it's just something that's called to me. And I see myself in that space and I see myself, you ask yourself 100 times, like, well, if I trip off this thing or any little thing, right? Like I'm gonna go bouncing off that thing, and that's gonna really suck. And I definitely run that. I run that through my mind, like the consequences and, yeah, the positives, negatives. And I even think sometimes, like, I'm like, man, this is pretty stupid. Like, like if you trip off this thing and die, it's going to be really silly.
Yeah.
But then, the pros outweigh the negatives. It's just something that calls to me. And even with all of that awareness of like how consequential this action could be, I zip up and I go do the jump and it just feels like there's no feeling like it, man. Like when you have envisioned this thing for so long and for years, because like Superdome was the same way and that Boulder one, like I've been thinking about both of those since 2019. And when you actually find yourself in that space and then you get to relive that moment forever, like right now.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's what makes it worthwhile. And yeah, why I had to do it, I don't know, but I did, and it's done. And will I do it again? I don't know. Probably. Like, honestly, probably. I'll probably find myself there in November when I'm hypercurrent, and I want to find myself in that space again. And if I don't want to, I won't.
Speaking of moments, have you ever had one of those kind of quote unquote come to Jesus moments during these jumps or before one of these jumps?
I mean, I think, yeah, pretty much every time, especially like when I'm up there, you're by yourself, no one's around. And you're just effectively, for me, I mean, it's quite morbid, I don't really like to talk about it that much. But I do think it's, powerful subject matter, and it's important to, in a way, because, it's a bass jump podcast, and it's like what we're here to do. Right. But it's such a personal thing. Like, it's really intense to sit here and talk about, like, I'm effectively thinking about killing myself. Like, like, it's not really it, but I'm thinking, like, I am going to step up here and choose to do this action. And I know it could kill me. Like,
right.
Because I'm just right on the line. This margin's so tight. But
yeah, in fact, like, you're putting yourself in a position where multiple correct decisions will have to be made in order to bring yourself back to life.
Yeah. And I just have to keep pushing my own personal line. Like, I just had another one. I'm right on the line again. Yeah, I don't know. I literally have to do this. Like, it's so hard to explain, but I think you need to have a come to Jesus moment every time. Otherwise it wouldn't be worthwhile. And why would you be doing it if you truly weren't, assessing the situation for exactly what it was and what the positives and negatives, the consequences either way are going to be on your life. Yeah.
Do you think that you get more out of being on an exit by yourself in terms of like that kind of self-reflection? Because I know that you do a lot of solo jumping.
I mean, I think that it's easier. Like, it's kind of hard when it's a little harder to be pushing your line when people are watching you. Cause it's the observer effect thing, right? Like, inevitably, it's affecting your decision making. So that, yeah, there's just a lot less noise, right? I think it's easier. Yeah.
And before we jump off of this topic, I would be remiss in not asking you this. Does it concern you at all that the 3 jumps that we've just highlighted, the ones that you're like most stoked on, were kind of made famous by 3 people who are no longer here and who have died base jumping?
Does it what? Like, what
does it concern you?
Does it concern me?
Yeah, like Chris Burns went in base jumping, so did Uli, and so did Will. I mean, we can argue that last one, but like, hey, the point is that like all 3 of those people pushed beyond the limit, and now you are firmly on the trajectory of doing exactly like those jumps. Does it concern you at all that like the people that have come before you did not make it to the other end?
I mean, I guess so. Not really. I mean, it's a weird one. I mean, I was already discussing the fact that like I could die. Like, it doesn't really have to do with the fact that they're dead. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess so. Like, a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to change what I'm doing, because once again, I'm doing this because I have to do it. And those guys were, motivated the shit out of me. And I'm lucky that, I got to be. Will Mitchell was one of like the first guy that, took me under his wing and like showed me how to use a laser. And, I went wingsuit base jumping. Like, I was pretty much soloing before that here. Right. And we spent, that whole spring together, just jumping out here, and doing stuff together. So I'm just very lucky to have known him. And, appreciate him so much, because he pretty much gave me the keys, honestly, I think. And I've just gone around effectively the world and repeated all the jumps he's opened, because I think was the best wingsuit base jumper on the planet, and probably will forever be the GOAT, in my mind. So yeah, no, I'm just grateful for them and what they did. And yeah, that's it.
Fair enough. So jump shifting the conversation, I want to get into wingsuiting as like a progression. Now you're an instructor, you're running events, you're bringing up the next generation. What's the new school progression look like, and how does it compare to the old school, previous to all of this laser and scientific tools and, number crunching and all that stuff?
Sight and smell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, we kind of discussed this a couple times, and like my theory on it and my wording on it's definitely changed even since we've talked last. But I don't even know if it's new school. Just as like in my mind, it just always seemed like common sense to me, because no one really said this to me. But like I think the effective standard old school is, and the only thing I was really told about wingsuit bass was fly fast, and that's super important. We got to fly fast, right? And then even it's like mock, don't flock, right? I'm not super stoked on that one. Like, even like the other thing I heard recently was I was at the tunnel and someone was saying, oh yeah, the tunnel's good, but it won't teach you how to wingsuit base jump. I'm like, I disagree. Like, you're telling me learning how to fly. I mean, you can fly in the tunnel at 2.6. Tell me like flying acro at 2.6 in the tunnel isn't going to make you a more proficient wingsuiter.
Yeah,
absolutely. And a better wingsuit base jumper. That's not usually like, that's maxed out. That's not usually what people fly at. But, right there, like to say that the tunnel's not good to teach you how to wingsuit base jump, like, I'm not really on board with that. I think even XRW is like being a really well-rounded wingsuiter, right? I think is going to make you the best wingsuit base jumper. And I don't think that's the old school theory exactly. But in my mind, it just seems like the most obvious answer. Like, why wouldn't you want to do 200 XRW jumps and like trying to fly your suit at a stall so you know exactly where that is, right?
Totally.
Or should we be flying like that next to terrain? No, it's a terrible idea.
but you should be able to.
But should you be able to? Like, there's no form of flying, like flying, FFCs or this, that, and the other. Like, any form of flying a wingsuit, I think it's going to make you a more competent wingsuit pilot. And, I think a good example is high Mugstuhl. Like, that one takes, I think it was like 600 meters of drop, and I traveled 1.5 kilometers. Right? Like, you got to be flying really, really efficiently. And, even like you're soaring like a bird, like using the thermals, right? You need a really good start. And I think I was right around like 90 miles an hour, like approaching up to 93 or something like it. Is that fast?
It doesn't seem like it.
Doesn't sound very fast.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very fast.
Right? But I mean, I'm only getting like an 8.0 glide ratio, like thermaling, right?
Right.
And I was building speed the whole time. Like, it was 90, 91, 93, and I was like sustaining that.
Wow.
Right. And that's why I made it all the way over, and I traveled the 1.5 kilometers in the, 600 meter drop, right, including the start, and was able to access the river and go ripping down it at like 140 miles an hour. Right. So yeah, I just think that the more videos that get out there and the more things people see, the more important it is that we have a deeper conversation about the mechanics and your abilities in a wingsuit before you're doing these jumps, or like exactly what glide ratio and your yada, yada, blah, blah, as opposed to just fly fast.
Yeah.
So,
if somebody is interested in wingsuit base jumping and they've already learned how to wingsuit skydive, what are maybe the top several things that you would recommend them spend their time and money on in order to prepare for that goal?
I mean, everything we just covered, right?
Right. I mean, well-roundedness, you talked about XRW, you talked about, acrobatic flying, getting in the tunnel, all of this stuff. Maybe we can get into like some particulars. Like, is there like, let's say that I come to you and say like, yo, Joe, like coach me through this. Here's where I'm at. 200 wingsuit skydives. What's the next skill set or competency that I should spend my money on really developing?
I mean, yeah, well, that's it's going to be such a personal thing. Like, right there, I need to ask you like 20 more questions, right?
Okay.
Effectively, but like, yeah, how can you fly steep and fast, right? Like, can we, discussions on dihedral roll stability, like this, that, and the other, like just I don't know. It's just it's hard to generalize really hard, because right there, then I said all the other things other than like, let's go turn our fly sights on and like do a flare jump and like, work on flying steep, right? Like I think effectively by saying that now, all of a sudden I've covered every single one of the bases, right? So really just every little thing. And from there, that's obviously getting pretty deep in the nitty gritty, compared to just like, can you go jump off of a cliff and survive? Like, sure. But like, really, what are you trying to get out of it is like where I'd start. Like, what are you trying to fly, balloon jumps, helicopter jumps, right? Like getting that dead air, are things we could definitely do to get you more prepared. Right. And then from there, I mean, every candidate's going to be truly their own. And really, I'd have to start with, well, what are you like? What wingsuit base jumping? Like, what the fuck are you actually trying to jump? Like,
so
what are we
there's
trying
a
to get out of
process
this?
here, yeah,
like,
and like there's a whole book to go over.
Yeah.
Without going through the entire book, then maybe I can ask you this: were there any like specific competencies that you developed for wingsuit base that didn't seem obvious to you in the beginning? Like, are there skills and maybe some tips or tricks that are kind of on the fringes that people might kind of totally leave out of the progression that might not be the most important, but are still things that are highly relevant?
I mean, the best thing I can think of is being a skydiver that base jumps sometimes.
Okay.
Like skydiving is, I don't even, we can't call it low risk, right? But
but it's less risk.
It's definitely
definitely less risk.
Statistically less risky to wingsuit skydive than it is to wingsuit base jump, right? So
yeah.
I mean, me personally, I got a big problem with like this whole I'm just a base jumper culture. And I shouldn't say a problem. Like I could give a fuck what you do, really. But like, it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. And I think it's honestly just pretty silly at the end of the day. Like I get so much time to deal. I don't, if I do 500 wingsuit jumps this year, you think I'm going to deal with line twists quite a bit? It's like, no matter how good you are. Yeah. Right. Like I'm going to get an opportunity to deal with line twists. Right. I'm going to just get the feeling of going through deployment, checking risers, unzipping 500 times, 1,000 times. And I'm going to do what? Maybe 100 wingsuit base jumps this year. Like I'm training in the sky is just the most important for all this stuff. I think if you really want to be a rad wingsuit base jumper. Cause at the end of the day, I mean, if I do 50 wingsuit base jumps here in Moab this year, like that's absolutely charging. Like that's one a week, to find the time between being gone for 4 or 6 months a year. That means really effectively you're doing 2 a week when you're here 6 months out of the year, which is, 4 hours of hiking and then you're elsewhere. Right. So it's, 50 to 500, like where are you staying sharp? Yeah. The sharpest, I should say.
Let me ask you flat out, how long do you think you're going to be doing this?
I think about that sometimes, I mean, I don't know. I did a jump the other day at Super G and it was, I showed 4 people up there and none of them had actually jumped it before. And a couple people did slide it off. A couple people wingsuited it for the first time. And that was a super rewarding experience. And, I did a bridge course yesterday or the past couple days with a guy, and that was a super rewarding experience. So, where I see it kind of going now is, like there was a reason why I was excited to sit down and talk to you and try and really open up about my life, because it gives me an opportunity to, pay it forward, hopefully, and help out the next guy, which is something I'm excited to continue to do or move into doing more, right? But yeah, if the question's how long am I going to be wingsuit base jumping, I have no idea. As long as I feel like it. Yeah, I don't know. Like
so you have no thought as to like how long you might be in this.
Yeah, I'm thinking forever.
Forever. Okay.
I'm thinking forever.
Okay, that leads perfectly into the next question, which is, do you think wingsuit base jumping in the way that you are doing it now could be sustainable on a forever level?
I don't see why not. Yeah.
Do you have an end goal in mind? Like what is a satisfactory accomplishment or finish to your career look like?
I mean, honestly, dude, I could just start playing golf right now, and I'd be super happy with what I've accomplished. Like I could definitely hang it up and I'd be happy right now. So I mean, it's kind of why, like, right there, even you heard me say, it's like I intend on doing it forever, but I reserve the right to change my mind, and I'm not gonna wrap my ego around like this identity that I am a wingsuit base jumper. I have to do this or else I'm not complete. Like that, it's literally something I love, and wingsuits are literally my life, and it's something I plan on doing every single day until the day I die at the ripe old age of 137. But I like to try to, or have the humility to say I'm willing to change my mind, because there's no reason to do it if you're not 100% in the game, right? It's just not worth the risk.
So you don't have a specific vision for how your career in sky sports might come to a close?
I mean, going in, I got to,
well, hopefully not. Good Lord.
That's not the goal, but like how would it just end right now? It's like if I blow it tomorrow, so yeah, no, that question's pretty final. Like,
no.
Like, yeah,
I'm not asking that. I'm asking you, like, how do you
got him?
I mean, I hope that's not how you see your sky sports, career coming to a close, even though, like, I get it. Like
I mean, if you're a realist, it's entirely possible, right?
It's entirely possible, though.
So I could see it happening that way. Is that my vision?
Right.
The way
it was
a joke. It was a joke.
Okay.
Anyway, I got Matt going. It's all good. But no, I mean, like, my vision. Yeah, for real, man. I mean, just to have a heart attack at Tough Turkey 157. Yeah, I don't like. I'm literally so happy with, like, I'm just trying to tend to my garden and keep getting a little bit better every single day and stay fired up and just be the most stoked person hopefully you run into that day, and share that. And I hope that it never ends. Like, honestly, like, my vision is that this never ends, and I just keep on dreaming and I don't have to wake up.
Man, actually, I would be that. It would be. I would be stoked to see that. 150 years old, you're at Tough Turkey. You're leading a group of, like, 40 or 50 people. You have a heart attack in the air.
Yeah,
but you keep flying the wingsuit because your body just fixes in that position. And
muscle memory.
Yeah, and everyone keeps following you, and then all of a sudden they're like, we should probably break off.
Yeah, just no Keith's for break off, nothing.
And then
you definitely land off
right into Keith's plane. Boom.
I like that. That'd be sick, huh?
That'd be sick.
Yeah, I'd take that one.
Yeah.
That was good. Yeah, we got pretty intense there for a bit. It's nice to have a laugh for a moment,
Yeah, and being that we're, like, kind of rounding it out and laughing it up, I've got a couple of light questions for you. What do you get out of base jumping now? Like, you say it's worth risking your life, but a lot of people don't understand that because they don't do it. So, like, can you speak specifically to the things that you are rewarded with when you're base jumping?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I rode, going way back, like, I rode fast motorcycles. Like, I did crazy stuff, like, long before I ever even, crazy in quotes, right? Like, adrenaline filled stuff, long before I even, like, I had my slight lapse of judgment, we'll call it, back there, for lack of a better term. So, it's just really, the whole risking your life thing. Like, it's not what it's about, right? Like, what do I get out of base jumping? Like, I think risk excites me, and I think it's just called to me, and it's something that, like, I needed to do, right? And what I get out of it is just a fulfilled life, right? I think that's the easiest way to put it. And the fact that it's, very risky is just a part of the game we play. It just is what it is. So
it's just your authentic life happened to be one that was full of risk.
Yeah, and I know that that's hard for 99.9% of the world to understand, but we're in this community are all lucky enough to have the opportunity to fulfill ourselves in this way, and I'm just thankful for that, you know?
I mean, that kind of changes the conversation a little bit when people say like, why base jumping? And you're like, well, because it's me, you know? And like, I'm not saying that everyone should base jump, but you should absolutely be you, you know, like that might be golfing. That might be, you know, getting into Wall Street, you know, it might be 100 million other things. You know?
Everybody's into something, dude. Everybody's into something.
All right. Well, I've got one last question for you. Well, actually, no. Before I ask you this one, let me get into, is there anything that you have on your mind that we haven't covered on this episode?
Not, I mean, we went pretty hard there, man. Like
We did.
we definitely dug in. Kind of felt like a broken record at a few points, but not really. I felt like we kept it moving pretty good there. Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited about excited to continue to build up Tough Turkey, you know, and continue to have more events and expand that, and yeah, keep pushing.
All right. Well, on to the last question, which I have to ask you because you are one of these people that pushes super hard and super fast, and I love you for it. But it is undeniable that you are on the cutting edge of what is possible. And while I very much hope that you make it to 150 years and you die from a heart attack at the Tough Turkey, I have to ask, if you were to lose your life base jumping, how would you hope that people carry that loss?
I mean, yeah, I really hope that doesn't happen, but I would say with humility and grace and the thought that that guy was fucking getting it, you know?
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, man.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any thoughts about what you've just heard, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Big shout out to Mark Stockwell, our sound engineer and co-producer. We love you, and we couldn't do this without you. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, visit our website, exitpointpodcast.com. And if you're jumping out there, remember that fame is simply being recognizable, infamy is to be storied, and legendary is something else entirely.